Good morning and welcome to Narrabri Shire Small Business Month 2020. My name is Julie Goddard, Small Business Liaison Officer for Narrabri Shire Council, and it is my pleasure today to be hosting our ATO webinar series with Linden Regina from the Australian Tax Office. Today we will be doing our webinar for starting a small business. A Small Business Month is delivered in partnership with Narrabri Shire Council, Boggabri Chamber of Commerce, Weewa Chamber of Commerce, Narrabri Chamber of Commerce and the Narrabri Industrial Network. Narrabri Shire Small Business Month will help businesses in the region reboot, connect and grow with many free events and webinars and workshops in October. New South Wales Small Business Month is proudly sponsored by New South Wales Treasury, and it's my pleasure today to introduce our host, Linden Regina from the Australian Taxation Office. Good morning, Linden.
Good morning, Narrabri. It's awesome to be on board with you guys. I've just been talking to Jilly and she's been telling me all about your great pub feeds down there. So post-COVID, I'm heading to Narrabri and we'll run a few tax workshops face-to-face because tell you something, it's been really different throughout COVID, and I would hate to see this happen again in my lifetime, and hopefully not in my children's lifetime. But I really miss the face-to-face interactions, and hearing your stories of how you fared through the drought and how you fared through COVID. I've spoken to hundreds of businesses over the last 24 weeks. I think we're actually heading into the 25th week of COVID. And I've been listening to their stories, gaining an understanding of their hardships. And we've certainly had to think outside the box. And I think this webinar, Starting a Small Business, really plants the seed in relation to thinking outside the box. So it's an absolute pleasure to be able to join the Narrabri Shire community. Thank you very much for inviting the ATO along. Feel free to always go back to the Narrabri Shire and ask your questions, because at the end of the day, Jilly and I will converse and I'll be able to get your questions answered. Because often we come to these types of forums and, we kind of don't think to ask the questions, but often we walk away from these types of forums and we think, could have answered, maybe I could ask still a question. There may be something lingering in the background there, something might have popped into your head. So contact Jilly Goddard at the Narrabri Shire Council. And I'll tell you something, Jilly, you are doing a fantastic job. It's been such a pleasure to be able to liaise with you. I know you're only new into the position, but I was going to mention this at the end of the webinar, but I'm going to start the webinar off with it. We've had some fantastic following with the Narrabri Shire Council posts, and I'll go into a little bit more depth in regards to that. I'm connected with a lot of deputy commissioners and assistant commissioners on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn in particular. And we've had a lot of comments and a lot of likes from our deputy commissioners and assistant commissioners. And the main comment that's come back, the trending comment, is, wow, look at what Narrabri Shire's doing. They're really the benchmark in relation to getting the support and the assistance out to be able to nurture small businesses back to, post-COVID normal. And, it's lovely to be able to see the support from a local council or a local shire perspective, and then a state perspective and then a federal perspective, because one thing that has come out through my conversations with small business is the last 24, 25 weeks has been very confusing. It's been very emotional times. We know how much the droughts affected you. And look, I'm an ex-farmer. I was raised in WA, so I very much understand that agricultural angle and how hard, times really can be. I think the main saying that came out of my childhood was tighten the belts. We just got to keep tightening those belts because, there wasn't much money around. And back in the old Paul Keating days, interest rates were really high. I'm sure a lot of you would be able to. All right, so look, let's drive on into this webinar.
Thank you so much, Linden. And it's a pleasure, Narrabri Shire Council is happy and is privileged to support our small businesses. So thank you for joining us, and let's kick off.
Absolutely. Let's rock this gig. All right. So starting a small business. So let's begin with respectfully acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters and the community. Look, I'd like to pay my respects to them, their elders, and their past and present. Okay, so look, feel free to come through the chat box at any stage with any questions. And there have been so many questions that have, risen their heads over COVID. And a lot of them have been around people have lost their jobs. They've had to shut their shops, shut their businesses. And I can give a couple of personal stories in relation to friends and relatives that, especially at the beginning of COVID, that sort of April, May period that, they were really, really tough months. I've got a sister in WA that owns 12 gyms, she shut them down, 150 staff gone. So what has come out of this is that a lot of people have had hobbies going on in the background. You might have cake makers out there, you might have jewellery makers, all sorts of different hobbies. And I think these people have kind of sat back and gone, well, maybe I can make a bit of income out of my hobby. Can I turn my hobby into a small business? But the main question that has come out of this is, what's the difference between a hobby and a small business? And that's what we're going to go through today. So we're going to talk business, draw that lovely clean line in the sand in relation to what is the actual differences between the two. We're going to talk business structures and what types of registrations you're going to need to be able to start your small business. And obviously I'll be taking your questions throughout the session because I always keep one eye on the presentation and one eye on the chat box. All right, so when you see this little speech bubble, it's your chance to be able to come through to me, ask a couple of questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. But alternatively, as I said, if you walk away and, something pops into your head down the track, no dramas, send Jilly an email and she'll be more than happy to get into contact with me in relation to getting your questions answered and also letting you know that you've got that direct contact into the ATO. We are quite normal people. We really are. We've all got families, got bills, we've got overheads, and we really understand what you're going through and what you've been through for so many years, in particular, relating to that drought. Or I'm not going to say that drought. Well, actually, I will say that drought because it's just been ongoing. I look at a lot of agricultural sectors around Australia and your tractor's broken down, you really need a new one, or you need a new header, or perhaps a bit of shearing equipment, and you just don't have the money in the bank to do it, and the bank's not going to extend that overdraft. So feel free to come through that chat box with any questions in relation to any industry type. I don't proclaim to know everything in tax and super. However, if I don't know, I certainly will find out for you. All right, so let's look at the main questions around starting a small business. Do I have a hobby or am I in business? And let's extend that a little bit. Do I have a hobby and can I turn that into a small business? We're going to talk about the differences between a hobby and a business. We're going to give you a great little example. We'll talk about what registrations you need and why you would actually need them. We're going to talk about applying for an Australian business number and how you would actually do that. And we're going to talk about what structures there are, because there's a lot of flexibility in this space. And we'll talk about what you can do next. So let's look at Eddie's bushwalking tour moment as a youth worker, but he loves his bushwalking. So, people around the metropolitan area, they love to get out of the concrete jungle and head bush. And so Eddie's been, between his family and his friends, he's been taking small groups out. They all jump in their separate cars, head up to the Blue Mountains, or, you're probably going to guess where I'm broadcasting from. But, or maybe they might head up to Ku-ring-gai, or head north, head west, head south. It's completely their choice. But so Eddie really enjoys his hobby. He doesn't have any intention to make a profit. He just wants to just do it whenever he can. You know, if he's got a spare Sunday here or a spare Saturday there, you know, he'll head out. And obviously during daylight saving hours, you've got those extra few lovely hours after the shop shuts. So Eddie's basically, you know, he's still in that hobby stage. He doesn't have an intention to make a profit at this stage. His activity is not regular. His size and scale, well, it's just him. And he doesn't have a business plan. And his business isn't, well, his hobby's not conducted as business because he doesn't have any regularity. And that's the biggest word that comes out of having a hobby and starting a small business. It's mainly around his intentions. So no intention to make that profit and no regularity. And you'll hear me talk about that a bit throughout this session. So look, because Eddie, you know, doesn't want to make it, you know, doesn't have that intention to make a profit, what can happen is that some people, you know, they feel bad that Eddie's kind of going out of his way, spending his own money on his fuel in his vehicle, getting up into those bush, trail areas. And so some people have been giving Eddie a bit of money here and there, you know, just to sort of cover, you know, a few costs. But when businesses do voluntarily pay Eddie for his services, they may request an Australian business number, so an ABN number. A business does this because when they pay for a service, they in turn want to be able to claim a tax deduction in their business for that service. So if they don't quote an Australian business number of the service provider they paid, the person paying them is quite liable to withhold 47% of the payment for tax purposes. So that actually means that out on 47% of that pay. So if Eddie fills out what we call a statement by supplier and he ticks these two boxes, that actually means that Eddie can get paid the full amount of the money that that person has chosen to pay Eddie to be able to cover his costs. New Eddie's journey. So, you know, originally it was just between family and friends, you know, oh, my mate Eddie, or, you know, my nephew Eddie, he goes out in the bush and, you know, they have heaps of fun. And 12 months down the track, word of mouth has spread. And we all know in a small country town, because I grew up in one, that everybody knows everything about your business. So Eddie's word of mouth has gotten around and everyone's raving literally about his services and how much fun they've had for that day. And as we all know, we've probably felt a couple of, COVID rolls around our stomachs. So we all need to get out and do a little bit more fitness, perhaps more schooners or glasses of wine than what we probably should have. And okay, we might not have had as many pub lunches, but I'm sure we've been eating okay at home. And by the way, I really, really miss the farm meat. I hate buying meat from the shop. It just turns my guts, because I literally feel that I haven't broken a bone in my body, and I reckon it's because of the fresh milk and the fresh meat, and then, you know, or just everything's fresh and nice. But so people have needed over COVID to get out, if they've been able to with their COVID restrictions, and go bushwalking. So Eddie started to think, well, you know what, maybe I actually could make a bit of money out of this. So he developed a website. And he's been advertising his website via social media platforms, because when you start a small business, and I'm going to sound like a broken record by the end of this webinar, but the trick is, the aim of the game is start small. Don't get too big too quick, because running a business is all about comfortability. It's all about knowing what you need to do and feeling comfortable with what you want to do. So Eddie knows his Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter pages. You know, he's uploaded a few pages in relation to his website. And again, word of mouth, as we know on the internet, enables you to be able to spread the message. So Eddie also thought about, well, hang on, what about if I do take these people into the bush and someone slips down, you know, one of a big granite cliff face, or, you know, trips over a tree root, or, you know, falls over and hurts themselves. So that's going to fall on Eddie's head. So Eddie thought, well, far out, I better go and get some insurance. So he went out and got a bit of liability insurance just so, you know, to make sure that he was covered in case anyone was injured, although Eddie's a real, you know, work health and safety fanatic. But, you know, accidents happen. And as we know in the country, accidents do happen. So Eddie also thought about, you know what, I'd really like to lessen my carbon footprint, and I'd like to be able to pile everyone into a van. So Eddie went out and bought a van. Because, you know, business, you can see the forecast of business is going to pick up, because people realise that they need to get out of that house or get out of the concrete jungle and go and do something for their health and for their well-being. So he's gone and paid for insurance. He's gone and gotten himself a van. He's gone and gotten himself a website. So this is where we kind of stop and we say, Eddie's turning into a business, because he's gone and paid out money, gotten the van, gotten the website. So his intentions have changed. Also, Eddie decided, because, you know, all this advertising's free advertising he's been taking up on his, you know, on the online marketplaces, he's realised that, you know, perhaps I should start maybe thinking about a business plan. Maybe I should start forecasting forward. And you know, he's starting to think, well, how can I do that? So now Eddie's, you know, his intentions to make a profit, well, yeah, it's definitely there. His activity is regular because he's cut down his part-time youth worker job to just Monday, Tuesdays. So he's actually making more money out of his bushwalking tours. So he's running them constantly, regularly between Wednesdays and Sundays. And so his activity is now regular. Now his size and scale, well, that's growing because he's got the website, he's got the van, and he's also paid out some liability insurance as well. As I said, he's still thinking about a business plan. Now, when I do my face-to-face workshops, you know, pre-COVID and fingers crossed post-COVID, and that's when I'm going to head down to Narrabri and or meet you all face-to-face and hopefully go out for one of your fantastic pub lunches that I've been hearing about. So Eddie's now thinking about, well, how do I do a business plan? Like, how do I go about that? So the ATO doesn't have a business plan template as such, but business.gov.au does. Now, I'm very apolitical. I don't like to push anyone in any certain direction, but, you know, you can jump onto Google and Google business plans. You can also, as I said, business.gov.au. I was on their website the other day and, you know, their business plan doesn't look too bad. But the main crux of the reasoning why you would do a business plan is because it's really important to be able to look back forward. Now, let me give you an example of, I'd like to start up a kayaking business. So, you know, if I was to start up a kayaking business in July, and let's say that I'm a regular on the Nepean River, so you definitely know where I'm broadcasting from. So if I was to start my business in July, we all know it's pretty cold in July. And you guys would be getting some phenomenal frosts around July, August, I would be thinking. So if I started my business in July, I know July is going to be pretty slow. Okay, there are a few school holidays about, but word of mouth hasn't gotten out yet about my kayaking business. August is traditionally pretty slow as well because those winds up on the Nepean River, they're pretty decent around August. September and October are great months because you traditionally got your school holidays that fall in those 2 months, plus it's getting warmer. And people are, well, if you're anything like me, sick of being in. And also, you know, let's look at the kids. Those kids and those gaming machines, really, but I won't start my rant here. It's probably not the forum to do it. So I like to be able to get the kids out, get them out doing something. And, you know, kayaking's a nice idea to get on the water and, you know, have a bit of a yarn whilst you're paddling up and down the river. Or on a dam, if that's what you choose. And you know what? I grew up around the dam, so anything on a dam is always fun. So business plans, or actually, let's keep going with the months. So November, if the borders were open, I'd get a lot of tourists in November because traditionally the weather around Sydney November. December, January, fantastic months. and you know, you've got your school holidays, parents want to get the kids out of their bedrooms, off the gaming machines, they want to do something as a family. February, again, if the borders were open, we'd have the tourists in because the weather in February is beautiful. Traditionally, between 26th of April, you've got your, you know, school holidays and Easter falls anywhere between there. And then you're heading into May and, you know, around my area up until May 20 is traditionally quite nice weather, but after May 20 and leading into June, they're cool months. So the reason why I give you this example is because I can actually look back to last July and I can actually see where have I gone really, really well and where could I do better. So obviously July, my business had just started, but come, you know, middle of August, September, I'm starting to get word of mouth out. I'm starting to use those free online platforms to be able to advertise my business. And then I get to December and I look back, you know, it's kind of over the last 6 months and I can see how much income I've earned, because this is the big indicator in relation to do I register for GST or not. So I need to work out by December if if I'm making X amount of dollars, am I going to, by the time I reach, you know, June 30, am I going to be reaching that $75,000 mark? Now you must register for GST if you are getting to that $75,000 mark, or if you do ride sourcing, you need to register for GST immediately. So the first dollar you earn in ride sourcing, when I say ride sourcing, you know, taxi driving, you know, Uber, all that sort of stuff. So ride sourcing always needs to register for GST from day dot, but every other business up until $75,000, you don't need to register for GST. Now, let me just give you a little bit more information around that GST. So if you are thinking about starting a small business, may I plant the seed in relation to the equipment that you may need to buy for you starting your small business? Has that got GST on it? Because if it does have GST on it, would it be worth you voluntarily registering for GST to be able to claim those GST credits back? It's just a thought. So, and you can deregister from GST at any time. So, you know, if you were to voluntarily register for GST, get the GST back that you've paid, you know, for your item. Say, let's use cake making as an example. You've gone out and bought that new, you know, cake mixer, you know, the latest and the greatest, and that's got GST on it. So if you were to go and purchase that, that means if you were voluntarily registered for GST, you can get that credit back. It's back, that money back in your top pocket. And then once you've bought all your equipment, we can deregister for GST until you hit that $75,000 mark. So business plans enables me, in particular, you know, relating to my kayaking business, enables me to work out, as I said before, where have I done really, really well and where can I improve my business? It gives me that lovely oversight, that lovely vision, that overarching vision in relation to how to improve my business. And this is your small business. So nobody's going to tell you what to do. You make the decisions. So with being armed with all these different types of, you know, sorts of information may be able to, you know, arm you to make better choices when starting your small business. So look, let's keep driving in relation to Eddie. So his business is being conducted as a business. He's paid out money, got the website, got the van, right? So let's keep moving forward. If you're in the creative arts, or, you know, sort of maybe you might be an artist, if you're in this type of industry, head to business.gov.au because it's going to ask you a series of questions in relation to whether your hobby is actually a hobby or it's a business. And may I suggest that you would print that out, because if your tax return was to ever be picked up by our data risk models, you can actually show us, because I used to be an auditor for a number of years. And you know, these are the first sort of questions I ask. You know, what studies, what did you look into before you started your small business? You know, how did you prepare for your small business? And, you know, a lot of people have actually shown me these printouts, especially if they're, you know, an artist or in that creativity space. They said, well, Linden, you know, I've actually done this. So that's not a bad tool to use. So let's draw a nice clean line in the sand between business and hobby. So if you've got a hobby, your activity is not regular, you don't intend to make a profit, you know, your hobby is not conducted in a business-like manner. You know, you do your hobby whenever you feel like it. You've got no intention to expand. You're just happy doing what you're doing because you love doing what you're doing. And you don't have an Australian business number. So on the business side, you know, you've made that decision to start business. It's really, really exciting. You know, you've got your Australian business number. You intend to make a profit. You're going to be the next Bill Gates in the agricultural or retail sector. Your size and your scale of your business is consistent with other businesses in your industry. Now, let me just stop here. Have you heard of benchmarks? So I'm just going to place this into the chat box now. So if you were to head to ato.gov.au and you place the word benchmarks into the search function on the landing page. Now, the reason why I like to talk a little bit around benchmarks, and I'll let you do your own investigations, is two things. So benchmarks, the ATO has gone out to around 98% of the business industries around Australia. And they've worked out on average what an industry can earn on average and spend on average. So if you were to, for example, start a cafe, you can go to benchmarks and you can actually work out what you can expect to earn and what you can expect to spend. And that's going to give you the indication if you've got enough money to be able to kick off that business. It's also a great check-in tool. So after 1 year in business, check your income or measure your income and your expenditure up against the benchmarks. So as an auditor, often tax returns are picked up for higher expenses, lower income. And just a quick example with this, I always use my mate Bob, who owns a Chinese restaurant. Bob put on his tax return that he earns $23,000 a year. But Bob actually went and spent $50,000 a year on rice, right, for his Chinese restaurant. So, you know, when I'm auditing Bob, I say to Bob, one of my first questions is, Bob, come on, mate. I can see you've earned $23,000, but you've gone and spent $50,000 on your rice. How do you do that? Because I'd love to do that. Teach me how you do that. Because at the end of the day, if you've only earned $23,000, how can you go and spend $50,000? Then I'll go and do a bit of digging and I'll go and look at Bob's personal living expenses. So I can see Bob's got a spouse. He's got 4 kids that are in private schooling. Bob's got a couple of, yachts and pretty flash vehicles parked out the front of his joint. And Bob, I can see, has been overseas a number of times throughout the year. And Bob's spouse doesn't work. How do you pay for all of that if you're only earning $23,000 a year? So benchmarks, it's got, you know, that two-sided, or that double-edged sword in relation to, firstly, you can educate yourself as to, if you are thinking about starting a small business, what you can expect to earn and spend. And also, it can tell you if you're matching industry type. So, you know, the first thing I said to Bob, hey, Bob, have you heard of benchmarks? And he goes, huh, what's that? I said, well, mate, if you head on to the ATO website, you're going to see that you're sitting outside of the benchmarks for your expenditure. Okay? All right. So, look, I can't do this with my mouse because my mouse doesn't seem to do a clear line in the sand, but that is the clear line in the sand between a hobby and a business. Let's talk business structures. So business structures don't change. You've got sole traders, you've got partnerships, you've got companies, and you've got trusts. So just remember, with setting up your small business, you can start at any end of this scale. So you can start as a sole trader. You can also start as a company or a trust. But if you, for example, started as a company and you think, you know what, I just feel it's a bit big. I don't have the monies to pay out for what I need to pay out for. I want to go back and be a sole trader. That's fine. You can go either way. You can go from sole trader to partnership back to sole trader, you know. You might meet the love of your life and you own a company and you think, you know what, I just want to get into a partnership with the love of my life. So you close up the company and you start up a partnership. So it can go either way. But again, as a small business educator, I say to you, don't get too big too quick. Step by step. Small business success is about step by step. 60% of small businesses fail in the first 3 years, mainly for 2 reasons. Because they don't keep good records, so they can't look back to forecast forward. And the second reason is debt. Now, we're going to talk more about the debt side in just a minute. So with business structures, it's all about cost and complexity. So if you start off as a sole trader, which I'm going to go into more detail very shortly, if you were to start off as a sole trader, the cost and the complexity, and when I say complexity, the amount of paperwork you've got to lodge, the amount of things you need to do to be able to meet your taxation and superannuation obligations are a lot smaller compared to if you're a trust or a company. So these are the types of registrations you would need to have to be a sole trader, a partnership, a company or a trust. So we will talk about this in more detail. Let's look at solid Sista Mechanics. So this is Maggie. Her real name's Margaret Smith. Now, because Maggie owns a mechanic shop, she's actually going to have 2 employees and she earns $95,000 for the year. Now, because Margaret Smith has changed her business name to Solid Sista Mechanics, she needs to register for a business name, okay? So she's going to register for an Australian business number because she's a sole trader. She's going to use her own tax file number. So when you're a sole trader, you use your own tax file number. And because she changed the structure of her name, she needs a business name. Now, let me give you a quick example with that. So if I am to go ahead with my kayaking business, and I'll keep you updated on that, but if I am to go ahead with that kayaking business, if I was to name my business Linden Regina's Kayaks, I haven't actually changed the legal structure of my name. Even if I was to go L Regina, I still haven't changed the structure of my name. But if I was to go, Linden Sensation Experience, well, I've actually changed the structure of my name. So that means that I need to go out and pay for a business name. Because Maggie is going to earn $95,000 for the year, as I was talking to you about earlier, it's over $75,000, so she must register for GST. The biggest question that comes out of that, when do I need to register for GST? From the first dollar that you earn up to $74,999. Once you hit $75,000, you must register for GST. Okay, so that means you charge GST, you collect GST, and you report GST to the tax office via an activity statement. You may often hear it being called a BAS, and you're going to pay that money, that GST money, to the tax office. Maggie's also going to register for pay-as-you-go instalments. Now, with pay-as-you-go instalments, a lot of people say, why do I need to do that? Well, you don't have to do that, but the flip side of this, the golden flip side of this, remember when I was talking to you about 60% of small businesses fail in the first 3 years, and the second so what happens, businesses forget, they've got good intentions, and they think, oh yeah, I'll put away my tax throughout the year and I'll lodge my tax return. Well, you know what, as much as you want to have good intentions, chances are first year of business, and it's hard, because you're just trying to find your feet, you're following step by step. And, you need to pay for those unexpected things that you didn't think that you're going to need. And this is again why a business plan is so important, because it's going to be able to map out exactly what you need and what you need to spend. So if you were to if you hadn't put away any tax throughout the year, tax return, you think, I got no money to pay for my tax. So that's when we're going to enter you into the pay-as-you-go instalment system, and we'll automatically do that. Don't see it as a bad thing, it's a good thing, because we're going to look at how much you're going to earn over the year. We're going to look at how much tax you're going to need to pay throughout the year. We're going to divide that by 4, and we're going to send you a business activity statement, or a pay-as-you-go instalment activity statement 4 times a year. And that's going to have your quarterly tax bill on it. Now, if you were to pay that quarterly tax bill, essentially what that means is you're going to lodge your tax return. You're not going to have a tax debt once you lodge that tax return. So you're essentially prepaying your tax bill. So Let's take my kayaking business as the main example we can use here. So if 6 months of the year, my business is seasonal, right? So 6 months of the year, I don't earn much. The other 6 months of the year, boom, I'm earning heaps. So for the 6 months of the year that I don't earn much, I can vary my pay-as-you-go installment to 0 because I don't have the money to pay for it. But in the other 6 months of the year, I can vary my pay-as-you-go installment up. So that means that I will pay all my taxes in the 6 months where I'm earning money. So you've got that lovely flexibility. And it also means that stepping forward into your second year of business, you're not going to have a massive bill hanging over your head. You know, we're talking to all these businesses that I speak with. That's their biggest concern, tax bill. I don't want to have to deal with the tax office. Although we actually like dealing with you because we want to understand what you're going through. But from your end of things, we're probably the last people you want to speak to. So this is why we talk about the importance of putting your tax away throughout the year. I always refer to it as tax on the go. And the reason why I use my phone to say that is because if you heard of the ATO app, it's a free app that you're going to download through your Android or Google Play stores, via these sort of things. So you download it and you can actually record your income, your expenses, your business related kilometres, and you can take photos of your receipts. So once you've done all of that, and trust me, it takes less than 30 seconds to be able to do each entry. And I'm going to say it again, tax on the go. Give you a quick example. I own a wood chopping business. I seized my chainsaw because I didn't put enough oil in it, right? So I had to go to Bunnings, bought myself a new chainsaw. Counter, I paid for it, the attendee gave me a receipt. Now, on the 4th of January this year, we had a 48-degree day. So as soon as I walked out of Bunnings, poof, the receipt that has faded. Those thermal receipts fade, right? So again, tax on the go, I take a photo of the receipt. I put the expense into the app, less than 30 seconds. By the time I've walked out of Bunnings, I've been able to have that piece of, that I've entered that tax detail. Now the data goes to the cloud. Now come tax time, if you're a sole trader, you can actually ask for the data to come down from the cloud via MyTax in MyGov, and that data is automatically going to pre-fill your income tax return. Gone are the days of you sitting there pulling your hair out going, where do I put that income? Where do I put it? Automatically does it for you. Now, if you're a partnership, a company or a trust, you can still use the ATO app if you don't have any accounting software, and let's be real. Between the drought and COVID, I tell you, and bushfires, I know you guys were pretty okay around the bushfire season this year, but between drought and COVID, we don't have a lot of money to go out and purchase that accounting software, and especially if you get starting a small business. So what you can do as a partnership, a company or a trust, bring the data down from the cloud in an Excel spreadsheet format and send that off to your tax professional, or use it to be able to lodge your tax return. So it's a nice, free, easy way of doing tax on the go, and think about all that time you're going to save at the end of the financial year of trying to look through, the ute glove box, the console, underneath the seats, and then you find them and they're faded. So if you can't prove, or as the tax office says, you can't substantiate your expenditure, you can't claim it. So don't cut yourself short. If you use the ATO app and you get into that lovely routine of regularly recording your tax on the go, it's my favorite saying, I'm going to hashtag that one. So if you don't get into that lovely routine, you're going to be spending a lot of your time, your precious time that you could be putting into your small business, trying to meet your tax affairs. I know which way I'd choose. So look, let's keep driving. Now, as Maggie has employees, she's registered for pay-as-you-go withholding, okay? She's also gotten herself some single touch payroll enabled software. So as of the 1st 2019, the tax office has introduced single touch payroll reporting to small businesses. We introduced single touch payroll to large businesses as of the 1st of July 2018. We worked out how we could change things, how we could make it easier so we could roll it out to our small business community as of the 1st of July 2019. So if you've got workers, you need to be reporting via single touch payroll. You may wages aren't getting paid at the correct rate, superannuation isn't getting paid. I'm not going to mention names, but I'm sure you heard of those famous chefs in the media over the last couple of years underpaying their employees. One of them underpaid by $9 million. Doesn't take a genius, but that doesn't happen overnight, does it? That's all I'll say on that subject. So Maggie's gotten herself some low cost, no cost, single touch payroll enabled software for her to be able to report her wages to the tax office via her single touch payroll software. All right, so Maggie lodges a tax return through My Tax. Maggie receives a 13% small business income tax offset. What does that mean? So if Maggie's going to earn $95,000, basically what happens, a 13% small business income tax offset is going to lower her taxable income. So what does that mean? It means that you don't have to pay as much tax, okay? Because your income has been lowered, your taxable income's been lowered. All right, so pretty simple affairs. Maggie lodges one tax return and she lodges her BASs, okay? Let's look at a partnership. This is Ashley and Kevin. Ashley and Kevin's got a furniture making business. Ashley and Kevin don't have employees and they make $85,000 for the year. So as a partnership, actually what I'll do, I'll just stop there because partnerships, another question I often get. How do I structure a partnership? Well, firstly, we always say, go and grab some professional tax advice. That's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to say to you is you can structure a partnership any way you like. What does that mean? You can do a 50-50 partnership. You can do a 60-40 partnership. I've even seen partnerships where one person's got 1% and the other person's got 99% of the partnership. But basically what it means is that if you were a 50-50% partnership or whatever percentage you choose, it means that, as an example for the 50-50, you would be liable for 50% of the expenses and 50% of the debt. So that's how the division occurs. So Ashley and Kevin, they got their ABN number for the partnership. The partnership needs its own tax file number. So you need to apply for a tax file number for the partnership. Because they changed the structure in their name, they need to apply for a business name. Because they earned over $75,000 for the year, they had to register for GST. Ashley and Kevin are smart. They also got into the pay-as-you-go instalment system because they didn't want to have a tax debt at the end of the year. So how does the lodging work? So Ashley and Kevin lodge their own tax returns under their own tax file numbers. Because this is a 50-50 partnership, Ashley pays 50% of the owings for the partnership and gets 50% of the income, same as Kevin. Now, both Ashley and Kevin, they both receive the 13% small business income tax offset. Then the partnership actually lodges its own tax return because it's got its own tax file number. Anything that's got its own tax file number must lodge its own tax return. So now you can see you're starting to get the picture of cost and complexity. So they've had to pay out more to be able to set up their partnership. The partnership had to apply for another tax file number. It had to lodge its own tax. It had to lodge its own tax return. So it had to lodge 3 tax returns versus Maggie, who just lodged her one tax return under her own tax file number. So you can see that growth, cost versus complexity. So this is where I'm going to stop here. And we're going to head back to Jilly, the gorgeous Jilly from Narrabri Shire Council. And we're going to find out what's happening in the Narrabri Shire Council space, what's going on for Small Business Month for October. And all I can say is that, as I said at the beginning, Narrabri, you're the benchmark You really are in regards to what you're doing for Small Business Month. So I'll hand you back to Jilly. Go ahead, Jilly. Tell us what's going on.
Oh, thank you, Linden, and it's been so informative this morning. We have such a big October planned for small businesses across the Narrabri Shire, and we hope that there's something for every type of business, regardless of if you're just starting or been established for a long time. We have 4 webinars as a part of the ATO webinar series every Thursday this October. Next Thursday, we'll be running a home business, and that'll be really, really informative and exciting, especially considering a lot of us have been working at home during the COVID period, and also a lot of businesses have started up during the drought, which is exciting to see. So there'll be a lot of information on offer there. Followed by that, we have cash flow for small business success, and cash flow, as we know, is king of small business. And with recent budget announcements, I'm sure that'll be an excellent morning of information. And our last webinar of the ATO webinar series is the digital options for your small business. And we know that's such a growing space and such a pivotal space for small business to be able to become more efficient and make your life so much easier. As Linden sort of discussed this morning, there's the ATO app, which is just one of many fantastic options available for small business to use. So followed by that, we kick off next Friday with some coffee catch-ups. So Narrabri Shire Council, in collaboration with our Chambers of Commerce across the Shire and Narrabri Industrial Network, we're hosting some coffee mornings in Weewar next Friday at the Marinda Cafe from 9:30. And in Narrabri on Tuesday, the 20th of October, we'll be at 123 Cafe. And following that, we'll be at Boggabri at the Bluebird Cafe on Wednesday, the 21st of October. So that'll be a great opportunity to catch up with myself and some of the other council team. We can offer you some information about what's on offer for October, but what other support we can also offer businesses on an everyday basis. Following that, towards the end of the month, we have secured the amazing Beck Fing from House Paddock Consulting and Training to do 2 fabulous webinars, one on maximising your time and productivity, which is very pivotal in business, and also a webinar on Wednesday, the 28th of October about you and your team. So becoming a better leader and also how to look after your team and grow your team so they stay with you during the good and the bad times. So also on the Thursday, the 29th of October, we are bringing our normal annual business summit online this year due to COVID-19. This event is going to be super exciting. Linden will also be joining us for this event. We'll have presentations from many government agencies, both state and federal. Mike Logan, who'll be doing a lot of work on becoming a better leader and the asking leader. We'll be talking about that. We've also got a great procurement session on offer during that virtual Small Business Summit. So we have ARTC Inland Rail joining us for a wonderful presentation, updating us on their projects from Narrabri to North Star. There's some very interesting developments that are happening around that project, which is just about to kick off. So that's a must attend for anybody who is interested in the Inland Rail project. And we'll be also hearing about the Narrabri to Narromine section of the project too, as well as Whitehaven Coal and many others joining us. We also have on the Friday, the 30th of October, a workshop day, which is, we have some great staff members from the Narrabri Shire Council giving a whole range of workshops on different themes for small business. So there's tendering, there's grant writing, there's inclusive businesses, and there's also social media and branding help as well available. And we have, to finish off the evening, finish off our October, I should say, a networking evening on Friday, the 30th of October, which is going to be a fantastic COVID-safe night. We haven't had too many evenings to catch up together since the beginning of this COVID pandemic, so this will be a great opportunity to catch up with lots of businesses in a COVID-safe way, as well as hear from some great local leaders, Mike Logan again, ARTC, and some other organisations too. So grab your tickets for that one. All of the tickets and information for these events is available on Council's website, or if you go to Eventbrite and just type in Narrabri Shire Council, you'll see all the events pop up there where you can register. I'll also put a link in today's chat box for anybody who's interested. Register for all of the events. All of our online events will be available for viewing after. So if you can't make it on the day, you can re-watch it when you're ready and share with your team. And we really hope you enjoy and get amongst the activities that are on offer this month. It's very exciting. So I'll hand back to Linden now, who will lead us back through the next half of the workshop.
I'll tell you something, Jilly, I will comment on those, the next 3 webinars that we're doing with Narrabri Shire Council in relation to running a home-based business, your cash flow and your digital options. So what I wanted to point out with that, trending information has come out over COVID in relation to how many startups have popped up around Australia, because, you know, some people have lost their jobs, and people are starting to think outside the box. How can I make a bit of income? And one way of being able to do that is running your small business from home. But how do you deductions, and what deductions can you actually claim, and what's the implications behind that? So tell your family, tell your friends, get out there, register for that home-based business webinar that's coming up next week, and also the cash flow for business success. So it's got a great little cash flow canvas in there. Look, it's only a resource tool, but look, anything free is great. Call me a country person, but I really like free stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and also that digital options, the last webinar in the ATO series, you know, in conjunction with Narrabri Shire, that actually gets you across the line in relation to some free digital options that you can use. How can you market your business? How can you be smart with this and not spend too much money? And the benefits behind going digital. We know, and you know, my old man, he used to sit in his office, smoke cigarettes to the extent that the walls were yellow and the pictures behind it were white, but that was back in the day. Yeah. And his paperwork was just piled up, right? And a funny story on that, the old man used to do checks and put them into the envelopes and pile them up and post them when the milk check came in. Well, I got a bit proactive one day and cleaned up his office, and I ran down to the R&B mailbox and I posted all the envelopes because I was doing my dad a favour. And then, you know, all I can say is hit the fan, because Dad realised that I'd gone and paid everyone, but he didn't have any money in the bank. So all those 3 upcoming ATO webinars, they're going to be the bomb, and I'll make sure that they're engaging and interactive. So I'm excited about what's happening in your space.
Oh, it's so exciting, and we're super excited for the following webinars.
Yeah, sounds great. All right, let's keep driving. So companies, Sue's got a Bushtucker Catering company, right? And Sue's got 3 employees. She plans to make over $150,000 for the year. So Sue's got to apply for an Australian company number because she changed the structure of a name. She needs to apply for a business name. She needs an ABN number for a company, and the company needs its own tax file number. So right here, right there, you can see the complexity is growing because she's had to do more things to be able to set up the company. Now, I'm also just going to stop there. If you're going to set up a partnership, a company or a trust, again, I'm going to encourage you to seek professional advice, because there are certain registrations and laws and you know, whether it be local, state or government, that you need to meet. So you need to be across all of that. So that's why we always encourage, you know, the assistance of our wonderful tax professionals. So because Sue earns over $75,000, yep, boom, you got it. She needs to register for GST. She's got 3 employees, so she needs to register for pay-as-you-go withholding. And because it's a catering business, she's dealing with food. She needs to go to a local council. She needs to head to Narrabri Shire Council and say, guys, what do I need to be able to run my catering business? And the friendly team at Narrabri Shire, they're going to point Sue in the right direction. So as you can see, the company is going to lodge its own tax return. Sue's going to lodge her own tax return declaring what monies that she's taken fees from the company, and Sue's not going to get the 13% income tax offset because company tax rates are lower than individual tax rates. And keep an eye on company tax rates because they may keep reducing. So you can see the cost and complexity. It's growing. Let's get into trusts. Trusts, I can only recommend, if you're going to go into a trust, seek professional advice. I'm pretty sure the day I was born, actually I know the day I was born, and my sister, my brother and I were planned, I'm sure, because the folks had a trust, and the day we were born they applied for a tax file number for us because we were beneficiaries of the trust. So little old me, before I was one, had to lodge my own tax return. Maybe that was an omen of getting into the tax office. Yeah, who knows? All right, so let's look at the trust. So there's five children and there's 6 grandchildren. And the Morton and Albert Trust, they want to be able to, provide for all of their children and their grandchildren within the trust. So the children and the grandchildren are all known as beneficiaries. So the Morton and Alberts, look, they've got a local tax agent called Ruby, and Ruby is now the trustee of the trust. So Morton and Albert will continue to use Ruby's services to establish the trust. Ruby will be responsible for managing all of the trust's tax obligations, including registering the trust in the tax system and lodging all of the trust's tax returns. So on behalf of the trust, Ruby's required to apply for an ABN number and a tax file number for the trust. So before the trust can legally operate, the trust has got to have a compulsory legal document called a trust deed. So the Morton and Alberts, they engaged a solicitor. So, cha-ching, there's more money in that cost and complexity because the solicitor's going to draw up the trust. And the trust deed includes things like the name of the trust, the name of the trustee, the purpose and reason of the trust, the rights and obligations of the trust, when and how much money will be given to the beneficiaries. So as the trustee, Ruby must follow the trust deed and operate the trust on behalf of the beneficiaries. And Ruby can use the trust assets to cover any of the debts that are owned by the trust. But I'm going to be very, very clear here. And I really, really need to emphasize this. Ruby receives trust dividends and distributes the money evenly between all of the beneficiaries set out in the trust deed. Now, if all of the profits are not distributed in the trust must pay 47% tax on any money that's not distributed. Okay, so aim of the game is if you've got a trust, don't leave your money in the trust. Make sure that it's distributed to the beneficiaries. So the trust is going to need its own ABN number and its own tax file number. It's registered for GST because, yep, you know the answer to that. So the trust lodges its tax. Each member in the trust, including little old me, and I'm not even 12 months, and I had to lodge my own tax return. And, as a teenager, I started off because I wasn't getting the money. So I had to have that big argument with my parents, and they said, well, you know what, it's our business, not yours. And I'm thinking, well, that's really unfair. I've been used as a, as a money hoarder. But anyway, that's another rant for another day. But this is the the benefits of having a trust and having your beneficiaries in there. So each member of the trust lodges its own tax return. The trust lodges its own tax return. And quick reminder, you leave that money in the trust, you're going to get taxed at 47%. So each member of the trust is going to receive a 13% small business income tax offset. So now you can see cost and complexity, it's growing. So if you want to find out more about what you need for your small business in regards to local council permits, state, federal, what you need to do to meet your commitments, head to ABLIS. ABLIS is a fantastic space to tell you what you need to be able to start your small business. So you now know the difference between a hobby and a business. You now know how to apply for an Australian business number, because you're going to do that via the Australian Business Register. You now know what registrations you're going to need and why you're going to need them. And you now know, obviously, what you're going to need to do next. And first port of call, Narrabri Shire, and seek professional advice. Now, the tax office, we're everywhere. Yeah, and I say that with a smile. We're across Facebook, we're across Twitter, we're across LinkedIn, on our YouTube page. And alternatively, if you're just not one of those people that likes to jump on social media, that's cool. Give us a call, 132866. I look forward to seeing you super soon in regards to next week, 10 a.m. on the 15th of October for a home-based business. It's one not to be missed. Trust me. I look forward to seeing you then. And thank you very much to Narrabri Shire Council. You guys rock. I'll hand you back to Jilly.
Oh, thank you so much, Linden. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this webinar this morning for starting a small business. We hope that you have enjoyed this event, and we will be back next Thursday with running a home-based business. Again, thank you, Linden Regina from the Australian Tax Office, and to the Tax Office for participating and collaborating with Narrabri Shire Council, our Chambers of Commerce, and business groups across the Shire for this event and for the events to come. My name is Jilly Goddard. Thank you everybody for your time this morning, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.